Welcome to Guide to IELTS. In writing task 2 of IELTS, if you get a question which is of agree-disagree format, that is, usually it has one statement which is an opinion, followed by do you agree or disagree, or to what extent do you agree. You can choose to either strongly disagree or strongly agree or partially agree or conditionally agree. This would depend entirely on what points you are able to make. You can't decide beforehand just by looking at a question which side you want to take. It depends whether you are able to justify your opinion. In this video, we'll work on a sample essay for this question. Some people think that the government should increase tax on unhealthy food to encourage people to start eating healthy. Do you agree or disagree? So in this case, we'll strongly disagree with the given opinion. And we'll work on 2 sample essays on this very question using similar points, but one would be a little simpler compared to the other. As usual, the first thing we should do is understand the question, followed by planning of the answer. The question talks about unhealthy food in general. It does not talk about a particular type of unhealthy food. This is important because in IELTS we've had questions where it is said that government should increase tax on food items with high sugar content. There have been questions which have just said that prices of unhealthy food items should be increased without mentioning whether government should increase it or the manufacturers should. So in planning of the essay, the first point we write is about the fact that youngsters are the biggest consumers of fast food or unhealthy food. And it can be said that youngsters won't consume this food if the prices are increased. But then we'd give the other point of view. That will be a very temporary thing. We need to have a system where the youngsters choose not to have it because they understand the negatives of it. An example we can give here is of liquor and cigarettes, which are highly taxed products, but still they sell a lot. Another point that we can make, and this is a point we'll make only in our second sample essay, which is a more difficult one, we'll write about the fact that it is overeating or gluttony that is a problem. Next point to disagree with the given opinion is that an individual's freedom of choice has to be respected. So again, we'll say that it is more important for individuals to be aware about the negative impacts of something rather than forcing them into a situation where they can't have it. Last point that we can make is about easy availability of the unhealthy food items and how we can encourage people to have healthy alternatives if we make them easily available. And then we'll conclude by saying that we strongly disagree with the given opinion. So as a rule, I don't encourage writing essays only from one point of view. However, in this one, we can choose to strongly disagree. So the basic template for this kind of a writing would be, in the first paragraph, we have paraphrasing of the question. And if we want, before the paraphrasing, we can have some kind of a general statement. Followed by the paraphrasing, we'll say that we are in complete disagreement of this given viewpoint. Then the second paragraph starts. In the second paragraph, first we write the topic sentence. The topic sentence basically introduces the paragraph, that is, tells the reader what we'll be mentioning in the given paragraph. After the topic sentence, we'll start listing out the reasons why we are against the given viewpoint. It's important to use the right kind of connectors, which I'll keep pointing out as I'll keep writing one point after the other. Usually when we write an essay in which we are writing both points of view, we write the introduction in the first paragraph, followed by agree points in one paragraph, disagree in the other one, and then the conclusion. In this one, because we are only writing disagree points, we'll still break them into 2 paragraphs. So our second and third paragraphs will be disagree points, followed by 4th paragraph of conclusion. As I mentioned before, we'll be working on 2 sample essays simultaneously because both will be written using the same points. However, even the simpler one is around 270 words and can easily get you a 7+ band. So let's start. The first thing that we do is paraphrase. So the question is, some people think that the government should increase the tax on unhealthy food to encourage people to start eating healthy. I'll change it to, it is the opinion of a few that government authorities ought to raise tax on food items that have an adverse impact on health so that the general public is discouraged from consuming them. Another way of writing the same thing that we'll be using in our second sample essay. One school of thought regarding the issue of increasing consumption of unhealthy food items is that higher tax ought to be imposed on them by the government authorities. Now that we have paraphrased it, we follow it up with the thesis statement, that is writing clearly whether we agree or disagree. So, however, I do not advocate this point of view. In the second sample, we'll write the same thing as, however, in my opinion, this does not seem to be a long-term viable solution to this complex problem. Having written the first introductory paragraph, we now start with the second paragraph. First thing, the topic sentence. In the first essay, we are just writing it as, there are a number of reasons against this viewpoint. In the second one, we'll improve on this and write it as, there are a number of reasons which justify opposition of this viewpoint, which recommends increased taxation on eatables which are detrimental to the consumer's health. Now we'll start listing out the reasons that we have against this viewpoint. We'll start with to begin with. We could also start the same with firstly, or the first reason is, to begin with, it cannot be denied that youngsters, who are the biggest consumers of fast food, usually need to cut corners. To cut corners is an idiom which means to do something so as to save money. Usually when we buy something which is of substandard quality because we need to save money. In the second sample, I'll write the same sentence but introduce another idiom, which is to bear the brunt of. This means to suffer the worst impact of something. So I'll write it as, to begin with, it cannot be denied that youngsters who bear the worst brunt of the accelerating trend of junk food consumption usually need to cut corners. Now I'll follow it up with how some people say this may discourage consumption of such food items, but it's not a long-term solution. Some may argue that the higher the price of such food items, the lower would be the quantity of these items that young people consume. However, even if certain individuals are deterred from buying the eatables at inflated prices, it would be temporary. This last sentence I could also write as, however, even if certain individuals are deterred from buying the eatables at inflated prices, it would be temporary, and they would do so only if they are on a tight budget. Now I'll write the example of liquor and cigarettes. This is apparent from the massive sales of highly taxed products such as liquor and cigarettes. Therefore, I'm of the opinion that a tax hike is a short-term solution. Now, the second point about overeating and gluttony, I'll only mention in the second sample essay. I'll start it with what is worse, which is a way of pointing out that this is beginning of a new point. What is worse, once these youngsters can afford these products, the ramifications could be binge eating, which is much worse. Studies have shown that more often than not, gluttony is a graver concern, the chances of which increase multifold if one considers the unhealthy food items as a forbidden fruit. Ramifications means negative consequences of something. Binge eating, gluttony, both refer to overeating. Graver concern, something which can have a more negative impact. Forbidden fruit, again an idiom that refers to something that is desired even more because it is not allowed. An example could be candies for children. Next sentence, therefore I strongly believe that in this case moderation is the key, which is only possible through awareness and self-discipline. This particular point about moderation being the key can be used in multiple essays, whether it is about unhealthy food or overuse of technology. Now we'll start with the third paragraph, in which we'll write the next point about freedom of choice. Again, because we are starting a new point, we'll use another connector, in this case, moreover. Moreover, it is essential to value an individual's freedom of choice. Therefore, whenever possible, the consumer must be made aware of the ramifications of eating unhealthy food so that they can make an informed choice rather than forcing abstinence of such food products on them. The next point about making healthy alternatives available. This one I'll start with last but not the least. Last but not the least, one key reason why many, especially youngsters, gravitate towards these eatables is their easy availability. Once again, the focus needs to be on ensuring that the healthy alternatives should be as, if not more, easily available. Finally, the last paragraph. In conclusion, I am in strong disagreement with the suggestion that an increment in tax on food items which damage the health would work as a deterrent in the long run and result in reduced consumption of these eatables. Two sentences which I thought of including in the essay but couldn't find the right place, but they can be used in such essays. 1. Although it is of paramount importance that unhealthy food items, especially those with high sugar or fat content, be avoided, there are better ways to ensure this. The second one, to break a bad habit has to be about choice if it has to have a long-term impact. On your screen now are some of the synonyms that we have used along with certain other suggested synonyms. Just make sure whenever you're using a synonym, you understand the meaning of that word. You can read the complete sample essays on our website guide2ielts.com. The direct link to these two samples is in the description of this video. That's it for now from our side. All the very best.